Welcome to Shannons Design to Driveway. I'm Warren Brown, and together with David Burrell, we continue our celebration of the people who made their mark on Australian car design. As different as each of the designers in this series are, one thing consistent is their early passion for drawing cars in school. This episode traces the journey of Holden designer Richard Ferlazzo, who could not decide whether to draw Italian sports cars or Australian muscle cars during class. So he drew both. Richard Ferlazzo joined Holden before the VN Commodore was released, and over his 34 years in the vaults of the Holden Design Studio has influenced so much of the styling of many memorable Holden cars. David, it's over to you, and I can't wait to hear about his Efijy concept car.
I think most designers will have a similar story to mine, where the passion for car design usually starts from schoolboy age. I remember the back of my notebook full of little doodles of cars. So there'd be maths equations on the front half of the book and doodles of cars at the back, and there'd be a race to meet in the middle where the staple was on the middle page. But for me, it was all about Italian sports cars and Australian muscle cars. So I would draw Ferraris and Lamborghinis mixed in with Monaros and Tyrannos. But my first foray into automotive design was actually at Toyota in Australia in 1986. I was working for Max Gillard, and he was looking for a young designer to help out with small items that could be localised for the Australian market for Toyotas. So I spent a couple of years there and then moved on to Holden in 1988 and stayed there ever since. But ironically, having come from Toyota, my first project was actually the Toyota Lexan version of the Commodore. So initially it was for the VN. So I arrived just as the VN was about to go to be launched, and the Lexan version had to be designed. So it made sense, having come from Toyota, that I would work on those projects. So there were grills and badges and wheel covers and all sorts of things to transform it from a Holden branded vehicle into a Toyota. When I joined Holden, the studio managers were Peter Nankervis and Mike Simcoe, and Phil Smood was in charge of the whole department. And I couldn't have asked for better mentors, to be quite honest. But I have to say, in any design department, you really learn from everybody. What I really like about car design is that, to me, it's the ultimate expression of product design. It's the most complex and expensive consumer product you can buy. It has everything in it. All the materials, metal, rubbers, timbers, carpets, vinyls, everything, it's all involved in the car. If I pick out a couple of favourites, they're all around the same period actually, and no surprise they're going to be Australian muscle cars. I'm talking Monaros, Falcon GTs and Chargers around the early 70s. Now, to me, these were the halcyon days of design in Australia. The big three American automotive companies designing and building multiple variants from a similar platform and competing head to head. So how great was that? When I look back at all of the Holdens over the years, and there are many, of course, some of my favourites, the EH has a special place for me, mainly because my father owned one for many, many years, and I was just a young boy at the time. I remember barely reaching the pedals, sitting in it when it was in the driveway and pretending to drive it and studying all the form of the interior, and I can still memorise it today. And this is my very early experience with cars and loving them. Certainly the early Monaros, so HK through to HG, I think that was a really elegant looking car. The HQ was even prettier again. By the time I was involved, the VT was certainly a milestone for Holden. I think it really brought to GM's attention what we were doing down here. It kick-started the whole export program and GM's keen eye on what we were doing down here. And then add to that, certainly the VE, many people have said we left the best till last. It certainly was a world-class car, and every derivative from it was world-class. Mike Simcoe had the idea that, you know what, there's a coupe lurking in there somewhere. We had Peter Hannenberger backing it, and it was the first concept car done in a very long time, as I say, and it turned out beautifully. And it was also a bit of a spoiler. I think it was in 1998 at the Sydney Motor Show. And no one knew this was coming. So this coupe was under wraps and no one had any idea, like I say. And the covers came off and there were oohs and ahs and the media went crazy and the public went crazy. I believe the business case was set around 10,000 units. Now, this is really low volume for a car company. Most other car companies around the world wouldn't even kick the doona off in the morning for a program with that kind of volume. It just doesn't make sense. But herein is where the Australian car industry has done so well. It's been able to improvise. You could take the one architecture, like a Commodore, and make many different variants from it. If you take the Commodore itself and say VT, from it was a fleet car, a utility, the coupe, of course, the Monaro, the long wheelbase wagon and long wheelbase limousine, Statesman and Caprice, all after one architecture. In this flexibility, we could find ways to do things. And in a very, very short time and on a very small budget, the Monaro program was created. Now the name itself, well, the marketing guys said, everyone's calling it Monaro. The media guys are calling it Monaro. The public is. Why don't we just call it Monaro? So the name hadn't been around since the late 70s, but it just seemed right.
Think of the Falcon coupe, 4.7, Monaro and Charger. Affordable, fast, stylish coupes created out of a mainstream four-door family sedan. Richard highlights a world-class core capability of the Australian automotive industry to create stylish models at minimal costs for low volume production runs.
Many people have asked us, following the success of the reborn Monaro, why didn't you continue? Why wasn't there a VE derivative? We may have been a victim of our own success there because previously we had helped the Chevrolet to produce the Camaro off the VE platform, or Zeta as it was called. So that car was originally designed as a concept in the States and, like the Monaro, was very well received by the public, and the decision was to go ahead. And we were the home room for the large rear-wheel drive affordable V8 cars. So it was granted to Holden to execute that Camaro. We could not get the volume to make a sustainable business model. It's unfortunate really because the Coupe 60 was a very good looking car and would have been a great evolution of the Monaro. So the decision was made to actually develop our own. The engineering body here at Holden made a very compelling argument that we can do this. We hadn't done an all-new platform from the ground up since HQ, and I was just a kid in those days, so this was new to me too. The essence of the VE styling was really a bit of muscularity without being too aggressive. So the cues in those days were, how far can we push the wheels into the corners with very short overhangs, and wheels out as well with some pronounced wheel arches. The thing looks like it's ready to go racing just in its standard form. And that's the essence of it. It's well planted, it's muscular, it's athletic, but it's not meant to be too aggressive.
Without a doubt, the VE sedan is the best looking GM product of that time. Such a confident looking car. Here's Holden demonstrating what it could achieve when given the free rein to take an idea from design to driveway without inheriting a styling legacy from somewhere else in the GM world.
One of the derivatives of the successful VE architecture was the VE Sportwagon. This one's dear to my heart because I had a lot to do with getting this one over the line. In fact, the Falcon and Commodore wagons of that period were the largest wagons in the world. Even the Americans were no longer making wagons. And wagons by this stage had a bit of a stigma about them. They were for middle-aged family guys who had to drive them out of necessity, not desire. So we thought, well, maybe we can reinvent this. We actually built it over the short wheelbase. Given that the VE wheelbase had grown, we swept the roof down. We were giving up some volume, that's true. It was a smaller wagon than the VT, but it was still very large.
In a world of look-alike SUVs, Richard's Sportswagon continues to stand out and build off the sedan platform too.
The Holden Effigy concept car really pays homage to the iconic FJ Holden, hence the contrived name. It's an effigy of the FJ. Anyway, when we revealed it in Sydney in 2005, it was just fabulous. People reacted so well to it. We had all these offers to take it overseas, which it did. It spent a year in the US and did all the major shows in the US. It won 2 awards there. It was Concept Car of the Year and Hot Rod of the Year. One unique challenge that Australian car designers have had over the years is the requirement to build in longevity into our cars. Let's say Commodores and Falcons and even Valiants over the years had to have a longer lifespan for a particular architecture, sometimes up to 10 years. That's because of the lower volumes here and the requirement to amortize the investment over time to recover that money you need to spend to create a new model. So when we design a vehicle, we have to bake in some longevity around its proportions, the amount of freshness that comes with the first model so that there is opportunity to expand on it later, to change parts cost effectively later, be it lamps or grills, bumpers. These are the easy things to change without changing the very expensive body structure. So a lot of thought needs to go into that to keep it fresh. And normally you'll find that if a car has great proportions to begin with, it then gives you longevity. And if I look at VT and VE in particular, the proportions still look great today, let alone back then. So that if you get that right, it makes it a lot easier to continue to upgrade the vehicle. Maybe in the future we'll be smelling electrons coming out of electric cars, but it doesn't really matter. It's the emotion it evokes. And I seriously can't think of another man-made product that can evoke the same emotion that a car does. So when you're a designer, to me it's the ultimate form, the ultimate expression of product design. And I have the utmost respect for all the other designs, whether it's fashion, architecture, or furniture, or anything. This was my vocation, and gosh, I'm proud of it.
Now, I'm sure when Richard Ferlazzo was drawing cars during maths class, he never expected to lead the design team for Holden. His final evolution of the Holden lion logo remains an enduring symbol of what we once had. Richard's irreplaceable contribution to our automotive landscape is none more significant than the final VE VF Commodore platforms. His passion for the VE Sportwagon is infectious, and he describes the Commodore sedan as a car that just wants to go racing even when it's standing still. Richard was one of the last ever Holden guys in the building, and by the time they flicked the lights off for the final time, Richard had assisted or played a role in the shaping of 2.7 million Holdens. Now that's a lot of sketches, designs and clay models, and a lot of memories for motor enthusiasts to celebrate. Thanks for watching Shannon's Design to Driveway, and I really hope Richard is not done with car design just yet.
Shannons Design to Driveway takes you behind the clay models of Australia's secret car design studios. Meet the designers of Australia's most iconic cars and find out what really happened as we unlock secret photos and designs deep from within the archival vaults. Join Warren Brown and David Burrell in the new must-watch series for every motoring enthusiast, Shannons Design to Driveway. Watch now on the Shannons Club.